Hi, welcome back to Let's Talk Adoption. I'm Heather. Kim's here with me today, and we're so glad you're here with us. Today, we're going to talk about something I feel like I've been hearing a lot about, Kim. I don't know about you, but Christian parenting podcasts.
And if you've ever searched for encouragement, advice, or just reassurance that you're not alone in parenting, you've probably come across a lot of those.
And there's a reason. I mean, first off, all of us are listening to more podcasts now, but I think back to when I was a younger mom. There were times that, parenting felt overwhelming. And this was probably before podcasts, but you went to books, maybe you went to videos, maybe you went to a mom's group, always kind of trying to find that guidance and support wherever you can find it.
I really love listening to podcasts, especially as an auditory learning learner myself. I love long form content, particularly about topics I'm interested in, like life stages such as parenting. So today we're going to talk about why parents are drawn to Christian parenting podcasts and what adoptive families sometimes need in addition to what those conversations offer.
Right. So I think we've already started with the why, but when it comes down to it, why do you think so many parents are turning to these podcasts now?
Well, I think it's a good thing, but I think people really are looking for reassurance, especially in the crazy world we're living in right now. And parents want to know that they're doing okay. And one great way to do that is to tap into a podcast that has more wisdom and experience than maybe the people you have access to in real life.
Yeah, I think that's key, the people you have access to in real life, because certainly now, more so than 20 years ago, it is more of a digital existence. We're connecting with
Mhm.
more people online, and so, while you see the pretty picture of everyone else putting on their Instagram worthy life,
Mhm.
you may just want that reassurance you're not messing your kids up, messing everything up.
Absolutely. And I think Christian parenting podcasts are perfect for that because usually when you listen to a Christian parenting podcast, of course, it's all through the lens of faith, but also they want everyone to know like it's okay that you had a bad day. It's okay that you made a mistake. It's okay that you had a rough moment because parenting doesn't come with a clear roadmap. And people are looking for voices that they trust. And when you subscribe to a podcast, you learn and develop that trust over time.
Right. I think something else people are often looking for is that practical advice. I know when I'm listening, reading, anything I'm doing, I'm often looking for tips. Whether it's time saving, organizational tips. From a more parenting perspective, often it was, how to handle certain behaviors, how to build the best routines for your kids, how to raise kids with strong values. And then, as your kids get a little older into, adolescence, you're looking for help and guidance with some difficult conversations you may have.
And I like how you mentioned earlier that, we really live in this digital age and people are showing their highlight reel on social media. And I think that causes this behind the scenes overload. The bar is set so high for parents nowadays. All the activities and all the standards and packing the cute lunches and having the Instagram worthy homes and everything. Um, there's a lot that people can kind of feel they're not measuring up to. So I think coming to a podcast gives them some encouragement that, they're not really finding elsewhere because people are so busy wrapped up in trying to keep it all together and reach those high standards. Parents really are overloaded and constantly just carpooling, driving to and fro, trying to make the healthy meals, all the things. And because everyone is so busy trying to keep that high standard that parents have these days, parenting can feel really isolating. And hearing other people talk about it can be really comforting.
Yeah. I think especially when it is framed um, around faith and from that perspective, I think it also helps moms, Christian moms, feel like what they're doing really matters, that it has purpose, especially maybe if you're a newly stay-at-home mom. And
Mhm.
so that isolation is not just because your world shrunk to your kids, but also now you're not having the adult and work stimulation that you had previously. I know for me that was a tough transition. So to, be hearing that positive encouragement that the greatest job you can have, you're doing, you're pouring into your kids and really, like I say, framing it from a, a position of faith, including faith in that. I think that that really can help as well.
Mhm. And, sometimes when you're listening to a podcast, it feels like you're actually having a conversation, even though you're just listening. And there can be so much good in that, especially for those parents who might be more naturally inclined to stay home and be more introverted. And maybe they don't have a big friend circle where they all get together with big play groups and play dates and things. So a podcast can help you have sort of a companion. You can play it while you're
Right.
doing other things, and there can be a lot of good in those conversations.
Definitely. And I think, I mean, let's just be honest. There's a lot of podcasts about parenting in general. And some of them are great. The reason I'm kind of drawn to the more faith-based is because they also emphasize things like grace, patience, um, parenting with an intentionality to it. Because, you know, I think when we're talking about raising our children to love the Lord, there's things we think we have to do, but I think often the one of the best foundations for that is showing that through our attitudes, through what we do, what we say, how we work that into it. And so that's why, like I say, for me, the faith-based podcasts really help emphasize those traits that for me I relate a lot more to a faith aspect.
When I was actively parenting, when my daughter was school aged, my favorite one, and I've told you this over the years, was Focus on the Family.
Hmm.
And originally it was a radio
Hmm.
broadcast, right?
Hmm.
But then when I was parenting, you could access all the episodes on their website. And so many more Christian-based podcasts have popped up since then, of course, now that we all have access to broadcast, which is a beautiful thing. And, I think that one of my favorite things about listening to Focus on the Family and that parents these days love about Christian parenting podcasts is that it really emphasizes there's like this theme of a strong family culture, being present with your kids, and really teaching that identity in Christ, giving every opportunity to help your child develop that in a world that is not our home. Right. And that's one of the things that I always loved about tuning in to Focus on the Family is that they understood where the friction points were for me as a mom, a Christian mom. And if I was to just go to the other moms waiting for the children to come out of after school, I don't know how they live their lives. I don't know what their
Hmm.
lives are based on. So being able to tap into Focus on the Family or nowadays any other Christian parenting podcasts, it really was something that helped encourage me um, to be able to instill that identity in Christ and make those difficult decisions that aren't always popular. And I think that's something that Christian parents they really need. It's kind of like going about your life in today's world with all the voices that disagree being so loud, and then you're just one quiet voice feeling isolated. And I'm sure you can go to church on a Sunday, but are you really talking to other moms? Maybe you don't know the other moms yet. So the podcasts really help enforce the beliefs that we have and give us those practical tips for implementing that. And I think that, especially for adoptive parents, Christian adoptive parents, there can be such an emphasis on preparing for adoption, how to
Hmm.
get there,
Hmm.
bonding with your child, how to talk with your child about adoption, how to honor the birth mom, keep your commitment with open adoption. But then what about the parenting? So I want to
Right.
encourage you, if you are waiting to adopt, researching adoption, remember to listen to podcasts that talk about parenting from a Christian worldview. I think it's gonna really help you even if you're not actively parenting yet.
Right. And I think that's a great point because there's so much that every parent can benefit from. And even adoptive parents. And I
Mhm.
think, it's also good to know that are there podcasts and information about adoptive parenting? Absolutely. We've talked about adoptive parenting, but you don't always just need adoption specific parenting advice because I mean it is there's such a wide array of parenting advice out there and sometimes it really overlaps.
There can be a lot of overlap, which is good. It's a good thing.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. But I think if you're parenting through adoption, there you may have moments you're listening to a podcast thinking, this doesn't really fit my experience. Although if you're adopting a newborn, you may think the same thing when you're listening to adoptive parenting podcasts. Oh, that doesn't really fit my experience. So it
Hmm.
is just one of those things that you kind of have to find where you fit and you might never find the perfect podcast that perfectly fits your experience.
And there are many Christian adoptive moms that do podcasts, and they
Hmm.
don't just only talk about adoption all the
Right.
time. Sometimes they are just general parenting topics.
Hmm.
But then you know that they get it about becoming a mom through adoption. And so they're able to kind of acknowledge that layer of parenting while still just giving general parenting encouragement. And, there are lots of layers to parenting, and adoption adds just another layer that isn't always part of every podcast. But if you can find the Christian adoptive moms that are doing podcasts, I think that that's very, very helpful.
Right. And I think the big layer there is your child's story.
Hmm.
Adopted children have something biological children don't, which is kind of a backstory.
Yeah, every child has a history that started before they joined your family, and it's so important to honor that. And we talk a lot about that here on Let's Talk Adoption, of course.
Right. And from that perspective, probably one of the things, the biggest parenting tips is how to include that and honor that. And that's one of the things, Kim, that I do get really excited, and we talk about it a lot about how to do that and when
Hmm.
to do that.
Hmm. Another gap, if we talk about, just general Christian
Hmm.
parenting podcasts and ones that have a focus on adoption, there's a gap in between, and that gap can be, encouragement as to how to support your child around loss
Hmm.
or even your own loss, right? Because adoption always begins with some level of loss, even in the most positive situations on one or both sides. Certainly, the birth mom will experience a loss. The adoptee experiences a loss, even though that might not be something they deeply feel that they need to grieve if they were adopted as a baby. But often, adoptive parents have also gone through loss.
Hmm. Right.
And I think it's important to understand, especially if you adopt from the foster system or you have a kinship adoption, or for whatever reason a child came to you not as a newborn, you need to have the support to know how to support that child
Right.
um, through some level of loss.
And that can really show up different ways as a child grows and matures. And it may show up in ways that aren't even connected to what the loss was. I mean,
Hmm.
one thing that is rather common in a child that was adopted internationally, if they went through a time when food was they were hungry, hoarding food might be part of their story. That's kind of easy to put together. Sometimes behaviors aren't necessarily easy to connect for for lay people, for people who aren't, therapists, who haven't counseled families, foster families, or other families who've adopted older children. So that's really one of those places where you may need more help than you can find in a podcast. So,
Hmm.
we're what we're talking today is more about general information, not that specific information, because like you were saying, Kim, the level of loss is something that we have to keep in mind, and the traumas that a child has been through too. And so they can show up different ways.
And this creates a need for more conversations, more
Hmm.
reassurance, and sometimes just more emotional support, sometimes than people really expect.
Hmm. Definitely. So, when I've spoken with adoptive families who are looking for maybe specifically encouragement, whether it's through podcasts, whether it's through counseling, whether it's through other resources, they can really be looking for a wide variety of things.
hmm I think a big one is just simply understanding,
Hmm.
whether it's a friend who's really good at empathizing or someone who's been through it themselves. And I think that's where the podcasts come in because being a Christian adoptive parent is like a little niche, right? It's a little niche. So finding someone who really understands those moments mean so much.
Right. And even if you're not an adoptive parent, sometimes just finding another mom who really gets um, your situation can help. So
Mhm.
again, even though you may be in this kind of narrow space, sometimes just, I remember when I was a young mom, I had two kids under three, and it just felt like a lot. And the other mom friends I had at the time, they only had one child. And so all of a sudden I've, doubled everything. And I just felt like the friends I had had didn't really get it. And I'll never forget, I met at a park one day this woman who she was older than me, but she also had two kids under three. And it was just so awesome to meet someone. And then I did get to know her just because she got it. She understood the difference from going from one to two kids. And it just it just really helped. Suddenly I wasn't alone.
hmm And by the way, BT Dubs, Heather makes the cutest kids. Her two boys were so, so adorable. Do you remember? Okay, all our kids are adults now.
Yes.
But do you
Yes.
remember that one day when I couldn't find Felicity and I called you frantically? And I was like, I don't know if you remember
I
this.
don't remember that.
Okay, so she was missing and I had searched the house high and low. And like, where could she possibly have gone? And at the time, Heather lived literally how many blocks away
Down
from
the
me? Only a
street. Yeah.
couple, yeah, like all our streets were named after birds, and hers was
Hmm.
one bird and mine was another bird. I won't share because she still lives there. But so she and the boys came over to help the scavenger hunt of finding Felicity. And I had been painting in her room, and I had put like a tarp over her bed with all her stuffed animals to protect from the paint. And I forget which son found her, but he found her sleeping like Sleeping Beauty, like a Snow White, underneath the tarp. She had crawled underneath to take a nap in the
On
stuffed
her bed.
animals. But it was so
Aw.
cute how you guys came over, and I just have to say,
Yes.
Heather was such a support and has been through these
Oh,
decades, you
you're
know?
so
But yeah,
sweet.
Heather makes the cutest, cutest little boys. They're they're adorable. But something else is that when it comes to parenting, one bond that we've always had is faith. We were
Mhm.
both brought up as Christians. We both value that we had that as our roadmap to life. And that is something that I think really is such a treasure in Christian adoption podcasts. It really helps you deepen how you think about your faith, and it also helps you incorporate that into just your everyday life and how you're training your children and how you're modeling things for your
Mhm,
children.
mhm. Because, I love how you said modeling things. You know, I I've also talked to families who have said, well, we want to let our child decide what their faith will be. And certainly your child will decide what their faith will be. But I think modeling, for me, my faith, modeling the truth I believe. It's not like I lined all faiths up and chose one. No, I was raised with a very strong faith in Jesus's sacrifice for my salvation. And that is what I believe to be true. I raised my children to believe that to be true also, and that is what they believe to be true. My faith is that important to me that I want to be sure that uh, they know that.
Hmm.
I strongly believe that the Lord trusted my children to me. And I think that we do have to model that. We do have to teach. I mean, we teach our children right from wrong. We teach them not to run out in the middle of traffic. We need to teach them our faith too and not rely on, well, they'll figure it out. And that can be challenging if maybe your spouse is not as much of a believer as you are. Maybe that can be challenging because yeah, you were raised with that, but you've kind of fallen away and don't really know how to get back into it. Although, in my experience, often when women do become moms, that's when they want to start going back to church, to taking their child to church. But really, it is about modeling that in the best way you can. And,
Hmm.
you know, it may be that, the best way you can is putting Christian music on in the car while you're driving. And that's great too. Um, just, you know, taking the time to, see what maybe you can learn um, to be the best mom or dad that you can be when it comes to, how do I bring my faith into my parenting?
Hmm. And I think Christian adoption podcasts, they're so tapped into today's parents and
Yes.
what you're navigating. So those are so important for you to start listening to, even if you've not adopted yet or just recently adopted. It's never too early to start learning. I don't remember who originally told me this, a parenting tip. Heather, maybe you might have been the one, but I think it was in a parenting book, probably a Christian parenting book, that said you should start teaching your children about things 7 years before they will encounter that thing.
Oh, wow.
Hmm.
That wasn't
Right?
me.
Okay, so I probably told you. No. um, so imagine the things your child will encounter in middle school, 12, 13 years old. Rewind 7 years. That means kindergarten, first grade. You're starting to already talk to them about these things and plant and instill the view that you want them to have when those moments inevitably come when they reach that age. So, yeah, if you have a teenager, you're talking about how to find a spouse, right?
Yeah,
If you have a 17-year-old,
yeah, right.
7 years later will be 24, starting to date for marriage, right?
Yeah,
So it's a good thing to remember. And I think Christian parenting podcasts really just help share these little key points of wisdom. And not only are they so tapped into the challenges that children and parents are facing, but again, like we've shared, the encouragement and the feeling of I'm not alone. And so I think that Christian adoption podcasts as well as Christian parenting podcasts are both very, very important. And I hope that you can count us in your library of
right.
podcasts. And
And Kim, one thing I just wanted to say, because I I did not do this, and if it's one of the things I wish I could go back and do differently, and that is exactly what you were kind of alluding to there. You want to learn before you need it.
mhm,
Because sometimes when you're in the midst of a parenting crisis, whatever that is, you have this flash in your mind of, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this thing. I don't
Hmm.
know. And some of us will fall back on what I'm going to say comes naturally. And what comes naturally may not be what you would choose if you had a little more information. So, you know, thinking, well, I don't need that yet. You know what? It's never too late to start learning. It's never too late to start preparing. And,
Or
you
it's never
know,
too early. Never
yeah,
too
well,
early to
that's what I
start.
meant. Yes,
Yeah,
never too
I
early
had a
to
feeling. I
start.
was like, if I know Heather, which I do.
Never too early. Yeah. Because it is. It's kind of one of those things, just like when you're waiting to adopt. Kim and I'll encourage you, learn about how it's going to be before it happens, because then you're better prepared. And the same goes with parenting. Learn, listen before you need it, because you are then better prepared. You're more equipped, and what will come naturally might come more from a place of education that you've acquired than just knee jerk from maybe what your mother did with you when you were a child.
Right. And you've given me so much great perspective on that through the years too, because, you know, my mom, she was
Mm,
wonderful and she formed our character, but she had a different parenting style than your parents had, bringing
definitely.
you up. So I learned a lot from you, that you were able to be like, well, have you considered this idea? Yeah.
Well,
Well,
and I think that is one thing we all do as mothers is we acquire a lot of knowledge in the process. And
mhm,
we started, one of the things we talked about early on was grace, and being able to acknowledge, gosh, I could have done that better, and
mhm.
not beating yourself up for it, but having grace, and then turning around and maybe helping a friend, helping
Yeah.
someone else, especially if you can do it with, gosh, I wish I knew this. It really is. And honestly, if we take it all the way back to the podcast, that's what a lot of them are, is moms who've learned and want to share with others, or dads. And I think that's really a great opportunity parents have today.
You know what else? It's a great reference point to build connections so that if you are finding yourself in the school pickup line, standing there on the sidewalk, not knowing how to make small talk or break the ice, you can say, "Hey, did you listen to this? I listened to this podcast." You can name the podcast, the one you like, and you can have different conversations about that and maybe connect with some other moms that you otherwise wouldn't have known how to strike up a conversation with, and you all have
Yeah,
something in common. You're all parenting in today's world. And that can
absolutely.
also be a possible opportunity to share your faith gently and without judgment, because we don't want them to think we're those weird Christians, right? So actually, I can say that because you know why? Joyce Meyer said that today on her YouTube channel. Today, she said that. Don't come on too strong, okay? But anyway, well, thank you all for listening to today's podcast. We hope it was encouraging and gave you some inspiration as to some resources that you can tap into as future or current Christian adoptive parents and just parents in general. And Heather, thank you also for co hosting with me. We hope everyone subscribes so they never miss an episode.
Definitely.
Mhm.
And if you have any feedback, or if you would like to be a guest on Let's Talk Adoption, please go to letstalkadoption.com, send us a note, send us show ideas. We love to hear from you.